Hello, today I'm going to be comparing the 44111 versus the 43311 echo configurations in Wuthering Waves. So I think we all know that 43311 is the most optimal setup. However, 44111 is a lot easier to obtain, and therefore substats are easier to roll, and maybe you can get better echoes which can compensate for the worse main stats. So I'm going to be comparing the two different configurations in a couple of different scenarios and the relative performance, so you can decide whether or not you might want to use one or the other depending on what substats you roll. So to start with, we have two damage formulas. One is to calculate the attack of a character, and one is to calculate, using that attack, how much damage you do. So a character's attack is based off the character's base attack plus the attack of their weapon, which is multiplied by attack percent sources, and then finally we have flat attack sources added on. So that attack gets multiplied by damage bonus, which is elemental damage bonus and skill damage bonus combined, multiplied by the deepen effect, which is multiplied by crits. So for these calculations, I'll be using Yinlin and their signature, which is the String Master, both at level 70. So Yinlin at level 70 has a base attack of 314.56 according to the wiki. Her weapon has an attack of 379, and every character has a base crit rate of 5% and a base crit damage of 150%. So now we have to look at the additional stats that a character gets, mainly from the weapon and their forte. So Yinlin gets a lot of crit rate and attack percent, and you can see that some of these are grade, and these are conditional stat bonuses, which means they're not active 100% of the time. However, for the purpose of these calculations, I will be assuming 100% uptime, simply because it won't really make too much of a difference in the final relative calculations, and our final conclusions will be the same either way. And also we have the Void Thunder 2-piece and 5-piece, and the 5-piece is also conditional, but I will be assuming 100% uptime, just to simplify the calculations. Now let's look at 44111 with plus 25 echoes, so max level echoes with 0 substats. Now I know that this is unrealistic, however this is simply to set a baseline from which we can compare the relative performance to other configurations. So Yinlin will use 1 crit rate 4 cost and 1 crit damage 4 cost, and 3 attack percent 1 costs, and she'll get 300 flat attack from these echoes. So this, in combination with the previous stats, will mean that she gets 112 attack percent, 40% elemental damage bonus, which comes from the Void Thunder set, 12% skill damage bonus, and we're going to leave deepen bonus at 0% because this, as long as we keep this number the same across different scenarios, then the relative performance at the end will be the same. So this means that her attack will be 1770, her crit rate will be 74%, and her crit damage will be 194%, which means that she has a crit modifier of 1.6965. This means that on average, she'll deal about 70% more damage due to crits. And so her total damage will be 4565. So this number is completely arbitrary, it doesn't mean anything by itself, and we're simply using it to compare to other configurations. So now let's look at 43311. So instead of a crit damage 4 cost and an attack percent 1 cost, she'll have 2 elemental damage bonus 3 costs. So her attack percent total will be 18% lower, but her elemental damage bonus will be 60% higher. So with a lower attack and a lower crit modifier, we can see that this configuration will still do more damage simply because a 60% elemental damage bonus is that much better. So now you might ask, when does 44111 become better than 43311? Because obviously the substats are easier to roll. So let's take the case where we have 1 crit rate and 1 crit damage substat on 44111. Now the reason I'm only using crit substats is because crit substats are the most optimal substats to get, and new players should be rolling for those substats first. And so I'm going to be using the average crit rate and crit damage substat, which are these values. So we'll be using 1 each, and you can see that already the 44111 outperforms the 43311 by a couple percent. However, there is a way to get 4-3-3-1-1 easier, and that is to break the 5 set and use 2-piece Void Thunder and using like Rainbow Echoes for the other pieces. So in this case, where you're only using the 2-piece Void Thunder, you can actually see that it performs worse even with the same substats, simply because losing the 5-piece means that you're going to be losing 30% elemental damage bonus, which kind of negates the purpose of going for 3 costs. So in general, I would avoid using Rainbow Echoes or even just 2-piece, and I would pretty much only go for 5-piece configurations only. So obviously using only 1 crit rate and 1 crit damage substat is unrealistic. So let's look at the opposite scenario where we have the max amount of crit rate and crit damage substats. And in this case, Yinlin will use 2 crit damage 4 costs to avoid overcapping on crit rate. And so her crit rate and crit damage numbers will be this, and her crit modifier will be a lot higher, resulting in a total damage number of 8312. Now, for 4-3-3-1-1 to compete, you'll need about 4 crit rate and 4 crit damage substats. So 1 substat of each less, which could be difficult to get or not, and it depends on each person's RNG. But you can see that it's actually pretty similar, because if you think about it, 1 of the 4 costs is the same in both configurations, and 2 of the 1 costs is the same. So pretty much the only difference is 1 of the 4 costs and 1 of the 1 costs gets swapped out for 2 of the 3 costs. So to put it simply, if your 3 costs have 1 or 2 good subsets, then to get a similar performance for 4-4-1-1-1, the 4 costs and the 1 cost will have to have 2 to 3 or even 4 substats. Now, you might have that, you might not, I don't know. Or maybe your 3 costs have completely garbage substats, which will mean 4-4-1-1 is a lot better. So again, that depends on your scenario. I'm simply pointing out the numbers, but either way, the performance is pretty similar. It's not like worst case scenario, the damage difference is about 10% or less. So, which honestly shouldn't make too much of a difference either way. So that's my conclusion. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.